The book is called A Man's Greatest Challenge is Being a Father. And the author of the book, wonderful, David Reedman. This book is so spectacular. So we're thrilled to have a conversation with him. David, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's lovely to see you this morning.
So let's talk about what led you to write this book. Why'd you write this book?
I suppose the main thing that caused me to write the book over the years in the things I've done as a minister, as a school teacher, working with youth in America, Australia and South Africa, I've been challenged by the breakdown in families, and particularly obviously working with guys and with men. Large numbers of men want to be a good father, but actually don't end up being there. And so largely a few years ago, my children encouraged me, Dad, you've had a lot of experience in this area. Why don't you put it into print? So apart from people you speak to, it's available to others. And that was the main reason I wrote it.
What are the biggest challenges, do you think, in being a good father? Where is the struggle?
I think in many cases, men haven't grown up with a strong father figure or model themselves. And I think many of them, our society tends to downplay the role of men. In recent years, men are sort of set up as an object to be mocked. Mum knows what to do, but the father, well, he's just there, doesn't know what to do. And so I think many men feel somewhat defeated because of pressures from society. They don't have the experience of growing up with a father or a strong male model in their lives. And so for some of them, it's almost too hard before they even try. I think for others, there was a survey done recently in San Francisco, I believe, that suggested about 99% of young men at the time their first child was born suggested they wanted to be a good father and committed to the child's mother. But within 2 years, nearly 2/3 of those have just simply dropped off the scene. And when they re-interviewed those men, they simply said, we simply didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So they left.
Your children encouraging you, obviously you talking about the many men that you've mentored. What are some of the secrets that I call them secrets, but what are some of the things that you talk about in the book that can help the men out there that are listening and the people who read your book? How can they become a better father?
I think the first thing, there's a couple of foundations. The first foundation is love, and that's loving your wife or your partner. That's loving your children, but it's also loving yourself. You've got to be comfortable in a sense in your own skin. And I think it's understanding how love is spelt differently to those different groups of people. And certainly for our children, love is spelt Time. It's the time that we spend with our children that is significant in their eyes, in their estimation of whether we love them or not. I think a second important thing is understanding the power of the words we speak. The words we speak have the ability to build up. They have the ability to inspire. They have the ability to give hope. But they also work in a negative. They have the ability to tear down. And I think most people can remember something that was said to them when they were young by a parent or a teacher or some significant figure. And the thing they remember is the negative thing that person said. They don't remember any of the positive. So I think they're two important foundations. From there, I go on to talk about some of the principles involved, and I've listed them as 6 T's. I think we need to realise the things that are important to us. We need to talk to our children about them, tell them stories, tell them the truth, talk about the ideas. Then we go on to teach them, which is explaining some of the things we've spoken about. Then we go on to training them, which is, I guess, the practical working with them, showing them how it works, demonstrating it ourselves. And then I think an area that many men fail in is the transferring of what we know to our children, which to me I think is 2 things. It's mentoring them, which is working alongside of them. It's sharing with them our lives. And I think many men feel uncomfortable in that. We maybe feel comfortable sharing our successes, but not necessarily our failures. And I think we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. And helping our kids to see, hey, we've walked this journey, we made this mistake, Don't go there. And the other thing I think is just modeling. We need to, in our own lives, model the sort of life that we want to see reproduced in the lives of our children. Too often people say, do what I say, not what I do. Well, it doesn't work that way. And then I think it's just a matter of, as we begin to sow some of those things, the other two things I talk about is transforming. As we sow seeds by our words, by our actions into the lives of our children, eventually those seeds will produce a harvest. And in the meantime, it's all about time, just taking patiently the time to allow it to happen.
I like that you talk about time, especially. Everything that you talk about, I think, is wonderful if you put all those pieces together. And I'm sure that is exactly why your children encouraged you to write the book, because of this, the influence that you had on them, and then obviously the influence you've had on other men. But there's this theory of, oh, it's quality versus quantity, but that doesn't really work, does it?
I think there's been a lot of discussion in the past about the difference between quality time and quantity time. The reality is our children don't name with your children, which is just simply quantity. Then there will come quality moments in the midst. With my son, he was chosen for an elite volleyball program by every game. And in that process, there were times when my son would ask me a question, Dad, what do you think about this? Or the kids at school are talking about that. And it was those quality moments that suddenly just appeared, and we were able to discuss things and have meaningful conversations, and both of us look back on those things. But they would never have occurred if we hadn't just simply spent time together. It's not possible to sit down and say, well, I'm going to spend 10 minutes of quality time with you now. That doesn't mean anything to a child. It's just the everyday life and allowing things to happen in that period of time.
Yeah, so beautifully said. What do you hope people take away from our conversation? A man's greatest challenge being a father. What would you like people to take away from this conversation and reading your book?
I would like people to be encouraged to realize wherever they are. For some of them, they may be starting out, maybe haven't got married, haven't had children at all. Some of them are starting maybe with new children. Some of them maybe have sort of gone down the journey a bit and finding life is not working out the way they thought it would. For some of them, maybe they're becoming as sort of step parents, or for some it's grandparents, that you've sort of taken on kind of the responsibility, maybe by default, of your grandchildren. I would like, wherever people are in their journey, to help them to recognise that it's possible to become a more effective father. The past doesn't determine your future. And there are things that you can put into practice. There are things that you can begin to do. And if those things are applied, and all of us make mistakes along the way, if those things are applied consistently, eventually they do produce positive results. And so I would encourage people and inspire people, hey, wherever you are, you could be a good dad, a struggling dad. All of us can do better, and all of us can keep learning, myself included.
Again, just such great wisdom to pass on. For you, what has this whole project meant? You know, putting the book together, having more of those conversations, you've had an impact. Do you feel that?
We've had an impact, particularly, I think, in the last 12 months or so, when we've been through the process of getting it republished, because I did make one slight change. I added an extra chapter to the previous version of the book. It started conversations with people that sometimes I've continued the conversation with them. Other times they've started a conversation with somebody else. And it's producing, although the book is specifically written to men, it actually applies to families. It applies to couples. I had a woman from America actually rang me the other day, and she was involved in a book fair, saw my book there and read it. And she said, I don't know my father. I've never seen him. She was only about 18 months old, I think, when her father left. And she said, reading through the book, I discovered for the first time maybe there were reasons why my dad left me. And I've been encouraged to forgive him for the things he's done. And so people have maybe read the book and are not necessarily fathers, but something has spoken into their lives, and they've been able to start conversations. she felt encouraged enough to find my phone number and ring me. But I know of others who've read the book and they've been talking to someone else or gone somewhere else to seek advice, and that's great. So I'm enjoying the journey.
And that's what it's about. A man's greatest challenge being a father. David Reedman, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.